So here's the custom block that shows the progress of the player as they're guessing letters in the word. It's kind of funny how simple this test script is, right? It's just call the custom block with a word, which is the word that they're guessing, and then the list, which is previous guesses. And we're just putting a list right here so that you can just quickly add, like if they guessed A, B, and C, you can just do that here. And this is just for testing. And the real game, you'll probably have a global variable. Maybe it's called guessed letters. And you would keep passing that in instead of some arbitrary list that you're creating on the fly. So the cool thing about this thing is there's actually several ways to do it. At the end of the day, you're going to be either adding a letter to some text or an underscore to some text. And if you don't know how to add text together, it's this join block, which might have, something like underscore and then A. This gives you underscore A. And you might have a variable there where you're keeping track of the word to display as you have it so far. And that variable might be empty at the beginning. It's nothing. And then you would update it each time. You would say set word to display to the word to display joined with an underscore. And then you would do this again. You would change word to display to the word to display plus another underscore. Let's just put this one more time just for demonstration purposes. Then at the end, when you can say word to display, what is it going to say? Well, it started as empty. Then you took the empty word and you added an underscore. And you did that again. But now word to display is an underscore. So you're going to add another underscore. And then you're going to add another underscore. So this is a way to gradually manipulate some text and build up 3 underscores in a row. But of course, you don't want to do this manually. For starters, you don't know how long the word is. That's going to be passed in as an input. So you don't know how many times to do this. You want to use a loop. If you haven't figured out how to do this yet, pause and try it now. This is the building block. So you just need a loop and join, and you'll use an if statement to see if the word is in there or not. If you've already done the guess checker, it's pretty similar. Instead of just returning true or false, you're going to be returning some text. So pause it now and give it a shot. Okay, let's check to see if you got it right. Or at least you got a version. Like, there are multiple ways to do this for sure. I'll show the simplest way I can think of. Our custom block has 2 inputs. It has a variable called word, and this equals word just means it's defaulted to that. If we change this to say, let's default the word to banana, then if we were to create a new one, it would just have a default called banana. But that's just for convenience or clarity when you're reading things. It's not really useful at this point. But we're going to have a variable called word. That's the word that the user is trying to guess. And then we're going to have some guesses that they've previously guessed. And if a letter is in this list, we're going to show it. And if it's not, we're going to use underscores. But let's start with just the underscores. If the word is word, we want to show 4 underscores. The word is bookkeeper, we want to show 10 underscores. Just like we had that word display variable when we were showing things, let's create another one. Let's just repeat what we did earlier and say word to display is nothing. So we have the word, which in this case is word, but could be anything, and it has a certain number of letters. And for every letter, we want to use an underscore. So again, we can loop over that word. To loop, we want to use a counter. So let's make a counter variable. And again, counter starts at 0. And we need a repeat. How many times to repeat? We'll repeat once for every letter in the word. And we know how many letters are in the word by using length of word. And every time we repeat, we want counter to change so that it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to the number of letters in the word. So let's change counter by 1. Again, this is just the components of a loop when you're looping over a list, or in this case a word, which is really just a list of letters. And you'll always have a counter, a repeat, the length of, and then you'll change counter by 1. And then we want to look at each letter. To get a particular letter, use letter number of word. And we can use counter so that the number changes from 1 all the way to the length of the word. And we use word as the word, the variable word as the word they're using, which happens to be the actual word, which is getting really confusing to say the more I say it. So I'll change it to bookkeeper since we're going to go ahead and do that eventually. So bookkeeper. So the word bookkeeper is stored in the variable word, and counter goes from 1 to 10. So it will, this letter counter of word will be B, O, O, K, K, etc. So right now, we're actually just going to be adding underscores. We want to add 1 underscore for every letter in the word, and then we're going to add them to word to display, and we're going to report back out word to display. So we already saw how to do that by changing word to display to something new. But we're changing it to something that we've based on what we previously had. So if we take word to display, which right now is empty, and the first iteration is empty, and we join that with an underscore, then we save that back to word to display. Now it adds an underscore for every letter in the word. This should actually work. Yep, B, O, O, K, K, E, E, P, E, R, bookkeeper. So that's the current progress, which is there's nothing in there. And we do have guesses, and so if we were to add E to this, now we should see the E's instead of underscores. But how do we do that? Well, in our loop, we're either going to add an underscore or we're going to add the letter. Either or. What does that sound like? It sounds like if else. So if something, we're going to add the letter. Otherwise, we're going to add an underscore. And so we know what the letter is using letter counter of word. And so we can probably go ahead and do this, where we join the word to display with the letter. And just for clarity, I'm going to put a space at the end as well. There's a little dot there that represents the space. And so this is the new word to display. It's the previous word to display joined with a letter and a space. And so we do another set. Override the existing word to display with a new one, where we join word to display with a letter and a space. But when do we do that? We do that if the letter that we're looking at in this part of the loop is in guesses. And there's a great, super easy block for this, right? There's if the list contains a thing. Well, the list guesses. And the thing is the letter of the loop at this point. We're already using that with letter counter of word. So this would be letter 1 of word, B, letter 2 of word, O, letter 3 of word, O, all the way up through R. And so if guesses contains that letter, let's add the letter and a space. If it doesn't, let's add just the underscore and a space. And that's the whole block. If we also have previously guessed K, we get those. If we previously guessed O, we get those. And now there's only 3 more letters, B, P, and R. And if the word is something completely different, like word, go back to our original, we've already guessed O and R, but we haven't guessed W and D, so we get placeholders there. So that's the whole script, at least the easiest version I can think of doing it. Given the word and a list of guesses, we're going to create a new word to display, which is empty by default. We're going to repeat for every letter in the word, check to see if that letter is in the guesses list, and if it is, we're going to update the word to display by adding on the letter and a space. Or if it's not in the list, we're just going to update the word by adding an underscore. And then finally at the end, we're going to report out that word to display so that it can be said by the calling script. And that's the whole thing.